Hello and welcome to my 7001 CRB assessment on enhancing assessment and feedback practices. Aims and objectives. Aims: to critically evaluate current assessment and feedback practices. To propose and implement where possible practices for enhancement in assessment and feedback practices based on 7001 CRB instruction, CU policy, professional bodies, for example QAA, and academic discourse. Objectives: to evidence a before and after approach to assessment and feedback practices, thereby showcasing development as a scholar and HE teacher. To integrate authenticity, transparency, relevancy, and inclusivity into feedback and assessment practices through innovations in technology and dialogic pedagogy. Introduction to Case Study 234 SAM Project Management Second Years. I am the seminar leader, which provides some challenges for implementing enhancements. There are a total of 38 students spread evenly over 2 cohorts. 80% of students are male, 20% are female. Over 50% are international students. I have included Hofstede's 6 dimensions of culture here as there is high international student population. For example, to what extent students are comfortable with unstructured activities is partly a function of their culture. Another example worth mentioning is whether students can easily see the value and relevance beyond the module and indeed beyond their degree. In other words, long-term orientation. Current practice, self and peer assessment. In my current practices, I provide formative feedback on the first day. I provide a simple rubric to students, that is, to rate themselves on a scale of 1 to 5 based on how well they think they achieve as individuals. And as a group, the simple instructions of defining the difference between project, project manager, and project management. Actual student samples are shown in Figure 1. There is not only support in the CU assessment strategy for this approach, but also support in the literature from Wheater 2003 stating the importance of accurate self and peer assessment. O'Donovan et al. 2008 speak of formative activities as planting seeds of spontaneity. Whilst you cannot directly create spontaneity, you can cultivate a soil which helps it grow. The Portfolio Pal noted that having an early assessment point is a good start, but that a more elaborated rubric would equip students more accurately to judge their own and peers' work. This approach is addressed in the enhancement section later on. I have also included here a comment from a peer who was positive about my current approach. Current practice, formative synchronous dialogic feedback. Another strategy of my current feedback practice is using technology to help provide real-time dialogic feedback as students create their activity presentations. I do this by typing on to the Google Slides notes field as they create their presentations. Dialogic feedback is, as the name suggests, a dialogue, but its academic application consists here of a dialectic between myself, the seminar leader, and the student, as it reaches out solely from itself to the object without surrendering itself to the discipline, power, or density of the object with which it must engage. Adorno 2017, page 31. This approach provides a rich learning experience and is a formative assessment point in line with CU strategy. This approach also helps students gain access to helpful and timely advice. Samville 2016. Figure 1 here shows how students unpacked the brief, and the small writing is my feedback written in the caption, which provides qualitative critique on the content. The Portfolio Pal liked this approach, but asked how sustainable this would be in a larger class setting. There is also a suggestion to create a more elaborated project plan for unpacking the brief. These points are both addressed later on in the enhancement section. Current practice, mock summative assessment as authentic formative assessment. My current feedback practices include an innovative approach of creating a mock, simulated summative assessment for formative feedback. This was an experiment in 725 SSL, and I included it in my formative exercise as an example of my summative assessment current practice capabilities. I believe this approach allows me to showcase my capabilities to best benefit from the Portfolio Pal's feedback. This approach is broadly in line with Villarreal et al. 2017, page 841, who state authenticity in assessment is understood as realism, contextualization, and problematization when teaching and assessing curricular content. It is also broadly in line with 3 of the CU assessment strategy factors: justification of type and number of assessment points, split formative and assessment, mine is a hybrid, and measured progress against course and learning outcomes. I have included an example here where I have marked the sections to show students how they will be marked. The Portfolio Pal thought this was a good formative exercise. However, the suggestion was to enhance this practice by creating a detailed assessment criteria checklist for students to do their own assessment, thereby increasing assessment literacy. As the Portfolio Pal also suggests, this is followed up later in the presentation with a more recent assessment criteria and rubric which better indicates grade boundaries. Current Practice Formative Intro to Quizlet. Quizlet is an evolving platform which creates a dialogic feedback opportunity to students. According to Carlos et al., 2011, page 397, dialogic feedback suggests an interactive exchange in which interpretations are shared, meanings negotiated, and expectations clarified. Moreover, Quizlet has gamified learning, in other words, technology-driven dialogic feedback. Carlos, 2016, page 3. Students create their own interactive quizzes and share them with other students to test their knowledge. These quizzes can be practiced as flashcards or as games. Students paste the link to their quiz on the Owlet community feed. Although the Portfolio Pal liked this approach, the advice was to expand this so students can post what they scored and also allow for redesign of quizzes based on whether they are too easy or too difficult. This point is addressed in the enhancement section later on. Enhancement of Assessment and Feedback Overview. Now that I have surveyed my current feedback practices, I will go on to discuss enhancements, some of which had a chance to be implemented, and some which will be implemented in the future. There were some limitations in terms of implementing enhancements due to the fact that case study 234 SAM, in which I am seminar and not module leader. The enhancements are enhancing accessibility and inclusivity, creating a feedback bank, creating more sustainability in real-time feedback by better preparing students to self and peer assess, redesigning the 234 SAM brief marking criteria and grid based on the CU marking grid and CU strategy, enhancing Quizlet to be more agile, upload exemplars based on industry papers, for example, inclusivity essays published by the Chartered Management Institute, teaching an international student audience to put Hofstede into practice. These enhancements uphold a course-based perspective and transformative learning, with factors of each scrolling to the right. Variables such as research-inspired, relevancy, collaboration, and making the most of Aula are all integrated and adopted from the CU Group Assessment Strategy. Enhancement Strategy, Accessibility and Inclusivity. This enhancement I would like to apply in future, as it requires planning in advance of the module. That includes listening to a phrase and typing it out. This system is an extension of Quizlet capabilities. CRISP 2007 states that by demonstrating a range of capabilities, this overcomes a narrow approach which would exclude dyslexic students. Eventually, I would like to create something similar for summative assessments as well as formative, but this requires a change in the mid, which will mean at least a year planning in advance. Feedback and assessment enhancement, creating a feedback bank. Although quick marks were pre-populated on Turnitin by the module leader, this list allowed me to make qualitative comments not included in the pre-populated quick marks for qualitative feedback purposes. In addition, and more pertinent to my own contribution, I attempted to make the subject part of marking more transparent. By providing students keywords such as creativity, critical analysis skills, research, accuracy, communication, and a full range of technical and artistic skills demonstrated. The CU undergraduate marking grid helped me formulate this list. In addition, these variables are applicable course-wide and thus uphold the CU strategy of a course-based assessment strategy for modules. Figure 7 depicts the 90 to 100 mark, but the only difference is the qualitative words. Adequate, good, very good, excellent, outstanding, and exceptional could all be used. Enhancement, sustainable and dialogic feedback. Another real-time adaptation I made was creating more opportunities for students to self and peer assess to make activities more sustainable. The idea, as the portfolio pal suggested, was that instead of the seminar leader making comments on all of the work, the students, armed with a more elaborated marking grid, would do this themselves. This creates more parallel working. On the dialogic front, students are encouraged to upload their work to the Aula community feed with comments, which also upholds a cultivated community approach. As seen in the caption of the image, Locke et al. 2016 and Dewsbury and Brame 2016 note that providing students more purpose is key, so the flipped learning approach here supports that view. Enhanced 234 SAM Assessment Brief. The enhanced assessment brief for 234 SAM is theoretical, as I am not in charge of writing it for next time and cannot make changes to it in real time. However, the principles are similar for how I will approach future assessment brief writings. The main objectives of the newly designed assessment brief are that requirements and grading criteria rubrics are explicit, transparent, and aligned with grade boundary understandings as an evaluation of CU grading rubric factors. There has been a transition still taking place at SSL in which grading rubrics are being implemented. In 234 SAM, there was criteria listed, criteria before, with detailed notes about the assignment, and there were quick marks available for markers. But there was not a transparent, elaborated rubric. I suggested that the ML provide the CU assessment rubric to students, which he did. In my redesign, I have simplified the criteria into 4 equally weighted parts, provided the suggested models and tools students should introduce, included the grade boundary criteria with factors such as originality, creativity, feasibility, and coherence listed explicitly, and provided the qualifying words against these factors. This strategy is in line with Bloxham et al. 2011 and Hounsell 2007. Enhanced dialogic feedback and assessment, Quizlet. In current practice, students are asked to unpack the brief by creating quizzes on the brief keywords, concepts, and requirements. However, there is room for enhancement, with all students required to upload their quizzes to Aula community page rather than optional, and asking students to share not only their quiz but also their quiz results by screenshotting their result, and to modify their own quiz depending on whether it is perceived as too easy or too difficult by their peers. This creates a full beginning-to-end process of flipped learning, peer assessment, and dialogical feedback, completing the learning loop. These changes will be made in future modules in which I use Quizlet to its fullest capabilities. Enhancement of assessment literacy, industry papers, exemplars with inclusivity example. Students often ask for exemplars so they can see how they might model their format, style, after a work which has achieved a mark they desire. An enhanced practice opportunity is to point students to industry papers which match the desired style of the brief, which also increases authenticity. In addition, an exemplar is enhanced by providing not only a template to be seen, but also relevant content. For example, providing an industry paper on the subject of diversity and inclusion can help students know how to do this professionally in their own works. For example, an article from the Chartered Management Institute addresses the subject of a leader coming out at work. In addition, providing industry exemplars increases employability, as students can understand what a professional piece of work looks like, which would receive top marks according to the CU marking grid. Continuing professional development, multicultural enhancement. One enhancement to teaching and learning was examples through the teaching of Mexican students as part of the CPD, drawing on Hofstede's website, which allows the consideration of the 6 dimensions of culture applied to a given country. Encouraging the ambition to become greater on the world stage was received well, with students keen to consider a reimagining of their culture as one of a world leader in the long term, despite Mexico's tendency towards short-term thinking. I also considered the 6 dimensions of culture when providing feedback to students on a later date, where I saw the effects of some of what I had presented on in terms of subject choice for their presentations. In particular, students wanting to reduce the so-called masculinity culture and empower women and girls to achieve professionally as much as their male counterparts. A summary and conclusion. Overall, the quality, authenticity, inclusion and relevancy, transparency, structured spontaneity, course-based view, and target audience consideration are all areas which are enhanced in my assessment and feedback capabilities. Quality comes from the CU strategy and marking grid and QAA insights. Authenticity, inclusion, and relevancy are enhanced due to understanding the needs of the target audience, including a backwards approach to assessment literacy, introducing the CU marking grid, accounting for hidden disabilities, and considering the 6 dimensions of culture. Transparency is enhanced due to being explicit of marking criteria, and grade boundaries based on CU strategy. Providing students with a more generalized marking grid also increases the course-based, i.e. long-term view of education. And finally, the experience of teaching and guiding Mexican students has provided me the reinforcement that applied intercultural practice is well received by the target audience. A culture is never predetermined, but has unique challenges. Thank you for watching. Goodbye! Hello, and welcome to my 7th